Good afternoon, folks, and good morning to our West Coast customers today. Really excited to welcome everyone to EDA's Good Jobs Challenge informational webinar. This is, I think, our 50th webinar of the month. Okay, slightly kidding, but we've been very active, and if you haven't caught some of our earlier material, please do go check out our website. We've been very active the past couple of weeks with outreach on all of our programming. But for clarification or awareness, today's webinar is going to focus on the Good Jobs Challenge. Welcome. I'm Craig Bristati, EDA's Deputy Assistant Secretary for Regional Affairs. I have the privilege to oversee our regional offices and many of our regional economic development programs. It's probably why I'm super excited for this historic move that EDA has made to support regional workforce development. So with that, I'd love to start the slide deck. Maria, can you tee us up into good jobs today? All right. So EDA's mission, I recognize that some of you might be learning about EDA for the first time. I'm sure many of you are longtime stakeholders, but with this entrance into deeper workforce regional development, regional workforce development, that is, I recognize that we're getting a lot of new stakeholders through this program. So I'll share that EDA represents federal government as a leader in economic development. We focus on supporting economic competitiveness through innovation, increasing resiliency, economic diversification, ultimately trying to make our regional economies healthier, more robust, and more independent. If we think about what we've recently experienced through this pandemic, some of the economic shocks have been driven by a lack of regionalism, whether it's strong local regional supply chains, for example. We saw the impacts on our manufacturing sectors. We saw it in retail where supply chain disrupted the availability of products, prices, jobs, and others were impacted. EDA really focuses on taking a place-based, bottom-up approach to increase a community's, a region's resilience and ability to navigate economic times, both good and bad. So welcome to this brief. I hope this is, for those newcomers, I hope this is the first of many conversations on EDA. I will also share that workforce is just one of many tools that we support in this space. I mentioned innovation earlier. We have a broad suite of innovation and entrepreneurship support programs. We have a great array of tools to support infrastructure, whether it's basic infrastructure like roads to water, sewage treatment plants, and more modern infrastructure like broadband. I love to say that EDA has the tools and abilities to meet communities where they're at in respect to developing their local regional economy, making it more resilient and agile. If you haven't really gotten to know some of our projects yet, one of the best things you can do to get familiar with EDA and how we invest in communities is check out our newsroom. Go to our website. On the top banner, we have a newsroom link you can go to and see all of our recent press clips. We do those regularly when we're announcing projects. And I think we have 3 or 6 months of inventory of recent press clips there that you can easily access. And you'll see a huge array of work that we're doing all across the country. We're in all 50 states and all 9 territories. And especially right now, where we are working hard to continue to deploy resources we received from the CARES Act And now, with this unprecedented $3 billion, we've got a lot of work ahead for us. So with that, I will introduce everyone to our $3 billion American Rescue Plan Act funding. Slide, please. This is a historic investment for EDA. It is nearly 10 times our annual budget and twice the funding we received for last year's CARES appropriations. And it is really exciting for us because it's enabled us to think differently, given us more tools to approach the pressing needs of the time. And I think you'll see that in the diverse array of programming that we've created to deploy this $3 billion. It is, I mentioned earlier, it is the first time we're doing such a substantial investment in workforce training, for example. We've got to get Americans back to work right now, and that's what this particular program is all about. I'll briefly talk about the menu of programs. Slide, please. I mentioned 6 of them. We're framing these or categorizing them in 3 different verticals: jobs for today, communities built for all, and regions for the future. Now, jobs for the today, this Good Jobs Challenge, we want to do that, so we're building training systems and infrastructure that aren't just going to help Americans get good quality jobs today, but we want that training infrastructure, we want that capacity to be lasting and serve our regions for the future. Travel and tourism, we've got $750 million allocated to support communities hardest hit by the decline and impacts in the travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation industries. Got to help those communities get back to work as well. Communities Built for All, our most flexible program, economic adjustment and assistance. We do, through that program, we're able to support infrastructure, entrepreneurship, increase access to capital through our revolving loan fund program. It is a bit of a Swiss Army knife of an economic development program in some ways. It gives us a lot of flexibility to meet the needs of every community. Indigenous communities, hardest hit, both health and economically by the pandemic. But we recognize that because of those challenges, we really want to work hard to deliberately engage those communities. Why we've created a $100 million program exclusive to our Native Americans, tribes, and other indigenous communities. It does have some increased flexibilities than we normally apply in our programs. So please take a look at that if you think your community might align with the interest there. We have already conducted that webinar, and I think it should be posted on our website really soon if it's not already. Regions for the Future, Build Back Better Regional Challenge is probably the star of the show, if you will, these days, with a $1 billion transformational effort to build regional growth clusters. We're doing that through coalitions of projects, groups of projects, all at once that are helping communities build a new vision, new capacity for their respective industry clusters in a region. Also, that one has already been briefed. Please check out informational webinar on that one. Lots of information coming out regularly from EDA. Last but not least, state planning, research, and networks. This is a tool to help increase planning, readiness capacity at the state level. Those were non-competitive grants where states were already invited to apply or participate. And then the research and networks component of that is all about building foundational information, resources, and technical assistance across this programming, so we're understanding what's working, what's not, how to be better, and through networks of practice, communities of practice, through those doing workforce development efforts, our revolving loan funds supporting access to capital, our university centers supporting innovation and entrepreneurship. We're trying to support the development of networks of practice so organizations can learn at a regional and national level and not have to reinvent the wheel. We want to share, I mentioned earlier, what's working, what's not, and better understand how to reimagine or retool our regional economies for the future. This is our program portfolio through the American Rescue Plan Act. But again, today's focus will be on the Good Jobs Challenge. So with that, I'm going to transition into this $500 million program. Slide, please. Now, EDA has historically always been able to support workforce development. We have done that through, and are continue to do that through, maybe a very contemporary example is a $2 million STEM talent challenge that we released, I think, about an hour ago. Check out our social media if you haven't already. STEM Talent Challenge helps regions build talent capacity to support emerging industries. So think about innovation-focused efforts around artificial intelligence, the space economy, advanced manufacturing, life sciences. How do we get new pipelines of talent into emerging industries and to support regional innovation? Also, we have been and continue to help build out training facilities through our public works program. We might take an old manufacturing building or an empty facility and help modernize, equip it to train workers in new industries. We frequently do this with community colleges and other institutes of higher education, helping modernize and improve their training capacity. But this $500 million Good Jobs Challenge is the first time we've been able to take a true systems-wide approach where we want to support the development of regional workforce training systems. And I want to pause on that for a second. This is really about supporting regional workforce training systems. Coalitions of organizations working together to create the soft infrastructure that's going to drive sectoral partnerships to create industry-driven training models to create measurable, meaningful outcomes. So what are those outcomes? We want training that's going to result in placements. We want training that's going to result in real wage gain. And to do that, it means it has to be modern. It has to be relevant. Making sure we're supporting a system that industry can engage on, trainers, workforce development boards, providers, all working together to make workforce training relevant, accessible, equitable, and perhaps resilient too, where we think about if all of these partners are working together, creating a meaningful system, they should be exchanging information, ensuring that the training is relevant today, but is also flexible and fluid enough that it can adapt to the needs of industry in the future. And that is why I think the system nature of this and how we can engage different organizations, different communities in the system, it's the difference maker here. We want to ensure that all of the right actors, participants in the region are at the table and connected to make this a valuable effort. Last but not least, what I love about this as well is EDA looks to support projects across our whole portfolio, whether it's workforce, entrepreneurship, or infrastructure, projects that are going to have lasting impacts, projects that are going to benefit citizens this year, next year, and perhaps decades to come. When we build something, when we build a facility, when we extend a runway at an airport or a rail hub, a railhead, that has long-lasting impacts. Commerce, business, citizens can benefit from that, and it's added capacity for years to come. if we're thinking about this system in the same way, we're thinking about workforce training systems as soft infrastructure, the connectivity, the relationships that can drive capacity for years to come. Keep that in mind. What is the best approach to do this, and how is this different than some of our individual projects that we might have supported in the past? Systems approach, theme of the day, folks. Hope that helps. All right, eligibility. Let's talk about who can apply. This is different than this program, the program is different than EDA's normal workforce training efforts. That's true. Slide, please. But the eligible applicants remain the same. So we do work only with intermediary organizations that align with this list of partners. We are not able to support for-profit businesses or individual citizens through our grants. Our grants can only go to intermediaries such as economic development districts, tribal organizations, local, state government entities, institutions of higher education. Yes, I hope that all stages or ranges of higher education institutions can participate here, that it might be a community college to larger universities, HBCU. We see them all in EDA's portfolio, and we welcome them all. Last but not least, 501c3s, nonprofits are certainly welcomed. But again, we are unable to provide grants directly to for-profit businesses or individual citizens. Sorry, folks. So with this, slide, please. If you're an eligible entity, please stay tuned, because we've got $500 million available for this challenge. We anticipate making 25 to 50 awards between 5 to 25 million each. That's a substantial investment for EDA, for those of you who know us. And I think that complements my earlier sentiment around the systems development that we're trying to get at. Through capacity for a region that's bringing the relevant partners together at scale to develop meaningful training models. We recognize, given the state of the economy and the importance of building back better, we want this to be as transformational and accessible to all communities. So projects may be funded up to a 100% grant rate. Historically, EDA does seek matching or local funds to commit to projects, and we welcome that here. We do not want to exclude matching resources. In fact, as stated here, projects that leverage other funds will be perceived as more competitive. But given the distress, especially in certain regions and in certain industries right now, we do want to make ourselves as accessible and relatable to the times today. I mentioned relevance and modern approach earlier. Job placement is what this is about. We want to ensure that the systems being built, the partnerships developed, the models, the training models deployed, that it's getting people to work, improving their quality of life through quality jobs. So please, when you think about how you might prioritize your approach here, talked about the systems piece, think about how that system can ensure training relevance so that we're actually getting citizens through training and into a job, and they're not ending up going through a months-long training effort and still struggling to find work. So to talk us through the details of this program, I'm pleased to introduce our Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy and truly resident workforce expert for EDA, Ms. Michelle Chang. Michelle.
Thanks so much, Craig, and thanks for teeing us up. Like Craig mentioned, we are super excited about this program. Obviously, this is a really historic opportunity for the Economic Development Administration to really fund a large amount of workforce development initiatives. And so really want to spend some time walking through some details with you all. Again, encourage you to continue putting questions in the Q&A, and we will try to get to as many of those as we can. Next slide, please. As we think about this program, and as hopefully you all have had a chance to take a look at the notice of funding opportunity, there are quite a bit of specific terms, and we know in the workforce field, there are a lot of different terminology out there, a lot of different definitions. So we did want to level set on a few of the different terms that we use in this program and what it means for this specific program. So we talked about quality jobs. Craig talked about the importance of having job placement as part of your proposals. That is certainly something we are going to be looking at very closely. We want to ensure that we are training workers for specific real jobs that they can actually get placed into. And so when we talk about a job too, we want to make sure these are good quality jobs that we are training folks for. And so what we mean by a quality job, and this is spelled out in the notice of funding opportunity if you want to circle back to that, but it's a job that's the wages exceed the local prevailing wage for the industry in the region. It also includes basic benefits. So for example, paid leave, health insurance, retirement savings plan, and or is unionized. So I want to emphasize that it's either basic benefits or and or is unionized. So it can be both or. And also we want to make sure that these jobs help an employee develop the skills and experiences necessary to advance along a career pathway. So this really means that there are upward mobility opportunities. There's more opportunities to get additional skills training so that they can continue to build on their current skill set and be positioned for future advancement. That's quality job. Wraparound services. Now, this is an aspect of the program we're really excited about. We are able to fund wraparound services that we know many times are barriers for folks to be able to complete this training successfully. So any service that helps remove any barriers or provide support to a trainee to enable them to complete their workforce training activities, we can cover those. So these are things, for example, as transportation expenses, language support, financial coaching, childcare, career navigation, and other coaching, as well as access to technology. These are all types of eligible use of funds that we can use through this program. We do want to note, like Craig mentioned, we cannot give the funds directly to individuals. So we cannot provide any sort of funds directly to an individual to subsidize their childcare costs, but we can, through the program, through your proposal, you all can have childcare services that we help provide funding for that can then subsidize the cost for trainees to be able to participate in. Sectoral partnership. You'll see a lot in this program around sectoral partnerships. We do want to emphasize this is really a partnership of an employer or employers within one industry that's really bringing together a core group of stakeholders to make sure that this training program works. And typically that involves folks from the government, the educational institutions in the area, training providers, economic development, labor, as well as community organizations. And all of these people come together to really focus on the workforce needs of a specific industry within that regional market. And so these sectoral partnerships, the real goal is to prepare workers to have the skills that they need to help fill the jobs that employers have. Now we want to distinguish that from a regional workforce training system. That is actually the system that fosters and supports the sectoral partnership. So think about the regional workforce system being kind of the umbrella for different sectoral partnerships. And that's a good segue to our next slides where we have some visuals to help bring that to life a bit more. So diving into the regional workforce system, like we mentioned, this is really the system that fosters and supports sectoral partnerships. So for example, we typically see, we're calling it a system lead entity. So this is the entity that's basically running the regional workforce training system. For us to fund this, it has to be an EDA eligible applicant. Those are the eligible organizations that Craig walked through previously. But this entity can oversee multiple sectoral partnerships. So as you see on this slide, we give some examples of what that might look like. You may have one sectoral partnership in technology. You might have another in agriculture, another one in healthcare, just depending on the needs of that local region. But you have one system lead entity that's overseeing all of those sectoral partnerships. And so the way we are defining this for this specific Good Jobs Challenge is the system lead entity is the entity that is basically the lead entity, the convener of the workforce, the regional workforce system. And then we also have a term that you see on the bottom, the backbone organization. That is the organization that leads and convenes each sectoral partnership. So this can come in a lot of different forms. We purposely left it a little bit open because we know that in every region, these things can be organized and designed in many different ways. So for example, you could have the same backbone organization who's overseeing different sectoral partnerships. And so we didn't want to spell that out, but we certainly recognize that could be the case. But we did want to distinguish between the system lead entity who's overseeing the regional workforce system versus the backbone organization who's overseeing the sectoral partner. And the next slide will walk into a little more detail on the sectoral partnership. So here, like we mentioned before, the sectoral partnership is really the partnerships of employers in one single industry. That's really looking to really make sure that that industry brings together all the right stakeholders together to develop workforce solutions to meet the needs of that specific industry in that region. So as you see here, we typically see a number of different stakeholders who are involved in a partnership like this. First and foremost, industry needs to be at the table. We fundamentally believe that employers know better than anyone else the skills that are needed for the jobs that they have open. So this is really something that's led by the employers. They need to be at the table. They need to be a very active and lead role to make sure that they are able to articulate clearly the skills that are needed for the workers that they are training. The other folks that are part of this partnership are extremely important as well. We've given some examples here of who we typically see in these successful partnerships. Everyone from adult basic education, organized labor, business alliances and chambers, other training organizations, workforce boards, human services organizations, as well as community-based organizations. And all of this is pulled together by the backbone organization. That is the lead entity for the sectoral partnership. And their real role is to play the role of the convener. And that's really important. I think you'll see in the notice of funding opportunity, we talk a little bit about what are the key aspects we're looking for in a backbone organization. Obviously, someone who's had experience doing this will be helpful, but we also encourage organizations who've never done this before to really think about taking on that leadership role. It really requires the ability to convene the right folks in the region to make this happen. And I want to talk a little bit about the different organizations too that we've seen successful in these type of partnership. Obviously, you need trainers, educators at the table to actually deliver the actual training, but it's also important to include folks like business alliances and chambers so that you're bringing in the employer community too. You may start with one or two employers in a region that are particularly have a challenge with a specific job family or job occupation that they're trying to fill, but bringing in the business alliance can potentially bring in other employers, whether it's in the same supply chain or in the community that are dealing with the same gaps, and you can reach a broader set of employers and help more workers have real job opportunities to be able to be placed into. We also want to emphasize the importance of organized labor in these types of partnerships. They have a real critical role to play, and we do want to make sure that union and organized laborers are at the table. Also, community-based organizations. As you may have seen for folks that are following EDA, we recently updated our investment priorities. And that's how we think about our priorities in terms of what we invest in. And number one on the list is equity. We do want to make sure that all of our programs are prioritizing equity. And that could be programs that are focusing on either underserved populations or underserved geographies. And so that's where community-based organizations can really help play a really critical role of bringing in particularly underserved populations to be part of sectoral partnerships. So they can help recruit workers that may be from underserved populations that may not have access to this type of training. They can recruit those folks to be able to be part of these training programs and ultimately get placed into quality jobs. Next slide. So I talked a bit about this already, but did want to just talk a little bit more about the system lead entity and the backbone organization. Like we mentioned, the system lead entity is the entity that oversees the regional workforce system. The backbone organization oversees the sectoral partnerships. For the applications for the Good Jobs Challenge, we are asking applicants to identify a backbone organization to support the sectoral partnership. And so we did want to make sure we talked a little bit about what we are looking for these organizations to have, and what's listed here are some of those things. Like I mentioned, the ability to convene is one of the most important things. So the ability to be able to convene the right stakeholders, like you saw in the previous slides, will be critical. And we're looking for commitment letters from each of those stakeholders so you can articulate what specific role those stakeholders will play and how they fit into the overall partnership. We're also looking for a track record of success. Like we mentioned, some folks may be new to this, some have been doing this for years. We think regardless, there are a lot of ways that you can show your experience and your ability to be able to deliver on this. So we're looking for documented evidence of that. We're also looking for a fundraising plan and a track record of raising funds. Obviously, we have a great amount of resources that we're excited to get out to you all, but that may not sustain your programs for the long term. And so we're also looking for how you plan to sustain these programs over the long term to be able to continue to provide training for the workers in your region. And then, like I mentioned before, we are very focused on underserved workers. We want to get a sense of how you intend to be able to reach a diverse set of underserved workers, how you will be able to recruit and conduct outreach to be able to have them participate in the training programs. And then lastly, for the system lead entities and the backbone organizations, we know at the end of the day, the most impactful role that you have to play are the people themselves. And so we want to see the staffing plan, how you intend to staff those organizations to be able to fulfill these programs and the bios for each of the key team members. Next slide. Now, in terms of timeline, we did want to spell out a little bit more detail the actual timeline for this program. Unlike some of the other American Rescue Plan programs that EDA is offering, this one has one specific timeline. It is not a rolling deadline. And so there's no benefit to being the first one or the last one to apply. There's one deadline. It's January 26th. And I apologize, this looks like it may have the wrong year. 2022 is the application deadline. So January 26th, you have several months to do that. And we did this purposefully. We know that getting the right stakeholders within a region to the table is not something that happens overnight. And to get real commitment from employers to place workers into quality jobs is also something that does not happen overnight. So we really do encourage you to take the time that we're offering from now until January to really build out those sectoral partnerships, really build out the regional workforce systems, and really work very closely with their employers to be able to secure strong job commitments to hire. So that's the deadline, January 26th. The awards, we are targeting a July 2022 deadline of awarding them. So sometime in the summer of 2022, we will announce all of the awards at once. Like I mentioned before, it's not a rolling deadline. All of them will be awarded at one time. And then we have 5 years once those awards are made for the period of performance. So the award performance period will follow that, and all work needs to be completed by May 31st, 2027. That being said, you will probably notice in the notice of funding opportunity as well, we are prioritizing programs that do have a more accelerated timeline. As we know, the pandemic hit a lot of people very hard. We want to get people back into good quality jobs as soon as possible. And so you'll see there is language in there that where possible, where programs are able to do a more accelerated timeline of 24 to 36 months, that will be emphasized and will be prioritized. Next slide. In terms of project types, you'll probably also notice in our various documents, we are looking to fund 3 phases of works through this program. And it really spans the workforce training system lifecycle. And so wanted to walk through those 3 phases a bit. The first is the actual development of the system or partnership. So this is the system development piece. We are looking to fund either the backbone organization of a sectoral partnership or the system lead entity for the regional workforce system to really help them establish and develop the systems and partnerships needed to be able to execute the training. So this is really the development piece of the system and the partnership. Like Craig mentioned, This is a core area that we just fundamentally believe very strongly needs to be in place, and we really want to put resources behind this. We know oftentimes this is an easy place where the funding and the resources are just not there, and then we cannot execute properly the training and the workforce development that needs to follow from this. So we really want to make sure that the backbone organizations, the system lead entities have the resources they need to be able to pull together the right stakeholders in a region and build a strong system that will last for years to come. The second phase is program design. This is the actual development of the skills training curriculum and materials and securing the technical expertise to actually train workers. This is where the system and the partnerships are really working closely with employers to identify what are the real skill needs that you need on the job, and how do we develop curriculum and training that will ensure that workers gain those skills once they complete the programs. So this is the development of the actual program. In this phase, we are also looking for the actual employer commitment to hire to happen. So during this phase, as part of the curriculum development, we're also looking for that key work to happen, is to secure commitments to hire from employers, so that once workers go through the training, we know that they're going to be placed into a quality job. Lastly is the program implementation phase. So this is funding for the actual training to happen, and this can include wraparound services as well. We do want to mention that for this specific program, for the Good Jobs Challenge, we are not able to fund any construction projects. So for example, if you need to develop or construct build a brand new facility for training for this program, we unfortunately cannot fund that through the Good Jobs Challenge. However, we do strongly encourage that you apply for that construction as well as the other workforce development activities that need to happen along with that through our Economic Adjustment Assistance Program. That is another $500 million program that we are offering through the American Rescue Plan Act that does allow for construction activities to happen. So please do apply there. For the Good Jobs Challenge, we do want to mention, though, other types of capital expenses are eligible expenses. So for example, we know a lot of times for manufacturing training programs, equipment needs to be purchased, and that can be quite expensive. We are able to cover equipment purchase through this Good Jobs Challenge. We are also able to cover leases and rents for training facilities through the Good Jobs Challenge. So anything that's non-construction, we can cover. Another point on this slide too, we know there are a lot of existing systems that are, or existing workforce systems or sectoral partnerships that are already in place across our country, many successful ones already. And so if you are an existing system, or even if you have an existing program that you've already developed curriculum for, we are allowing proposals to come in that aren't covering all three phases, but are covering just certain phases. So for example, if you have a system already developed, but you just need funding for program design and implementation, you can submit a proposal just for that. If you have a system developed and you have already secured funding from another source for the implementation piece, but you need funding for the program design, we are also able to entertain proposals for just that piece of it. What you will need to do is to be able to demonstrate, though, that you have successfully completed each phase before we move you on to the next phase. And I'll talk a bit more about that in the next slides. So this slide talks a bit about the eligible activities under each phase. I know we're running a little short on time, so I'm not going to go through all of this. We have talked a lot about all of these already, but just want to make sure that we spent some time letting you take a look at this. We will have these slides on our website so that you can look at this, but like I mentioned, these are the three phases. This provides some more details on the eligible activities that we can fund in each phase. Next slide. On this slide, we wanted to talk just a little bit about how much funding we anticipate being able to give in each phase. Again, these are estimates. We are really looking for you all to tell us what you need, but wanted to give at least maybe some ballpark estimates as you think about how much funding to ask for. So what you see here is how much we anticipate funding for each phase of work. And you should notice very distinctly that there is a per region, per industry, per role caveat on each one. So we anticipate a system development will roughly cost about $1 million per system. A program, one specific program that's per region, per industry, per role, roughly costing about $2 million, and then program implementation ranging from $2 to $7 million. So that just gives you a sense of what that might look like. So wanted to give a little bit of flavor as you think about what that looks like. But again, we really are looking for you all to tell us what you need. We wanted to give at least some ballpark ranges so you can think about what it might look like when you put in your proposals. Next slide. And like I mentioned before, you can submit proposals that are just for a specific phase. What we have outlined on this slide is the successful completion activities that you need to be able to demonstrate before we can then be able to release funds to you for the next phase. So if, for example, like I mentioned, if you have a system development or a system already developed and you are looking for funding just for program design and program implementation, the items that you see here will be what we'll be looking for you to be able to move on to the next phases and for us to be able to release funds for you to be able to utilize in the future phases. Again, we will have all of this information available on our website so you can take a look, but we did want to make sure that we called out there will be a gated process with this funding so that before you move on to the next phase, we want to make sure all of these documentation and activities have happened. Next slide. Lastly, I just want to talk a little bit more about employer commitments. I think we've stressed this quite a bit. We know that a lot of training programs, a lot of great training programs are out there. And what we really want to make sure is that a worker takes time, and we know it's a lot of time for workers to dedicate to be able to actually complete skills training. And we want to make sure that at successful completion of these programs, they have a job waiting for them. So I want to talk a little bit about what that means. This is something that we'll be looking at very carefully in the applications. We want to make sure there are firm commitments to hire. But we understand this is also something difficult to obtain. And so we are offering several different ways for that to happen. An employer commitment can come in the form of a work and learn program. So for example, there are many successful programs out there where, for example, somebody will go to classes 2 days a week and then work 3 days a week. And during the 3 days that they work, they are earning actual wages. And oftentimes those wages help cover the costs of their learning. So those type of programs would actually count as an employer commitment to hire, since someone is actually gaining a wage as they are also learning. We also are open to registered apprenticeship. So whether you have worked with the Department of Labor and have a registered apprenticeship program already in place, those type of programs are also eligible as employer commitment to hire. Other types of commitments that will work as well are conditional hire. So an employer can commit to hiring a certain amount of workers on the condition of successful completion of a training program. And they can also say that they want to make sure that that person has demonstrated skill acquisition and mastery at the end of that completion. So it could be an assessment or some sort of demonstration of that skill mastery before they commit to the hire. Another way that this can come is an employer commitment to hire a specific number of workers who successfully complete the training provided through the sectoral partnership. So just wanted to give an example of some different ways that these employer commitments can happen. And we do really encourage you to explore different ways that you can work with employers to make sure that at successful completion of training, workers are placed into quality jobs. Next slide. All right, so we've gone through a lot of information here. We do want to make sure we give you all the resources that you need to put together some good proposals. Hopefully you have been able to find our notice of funding opportunity. It is on our website. The website is here, eda.gov/funding/-opportunities. We also encourage you, if you have any questions and are looking for someone to talk to at EDA, please do reach out to your economic development representative. We have people in every state that are ready to talk to you. That is at eda.gov/contact. You can find that person. But we also encourage you, number 2 on this list is to find your economic development district for planning support and technical assistance. And then we do have a good jobs challenge specific email box. If you have a question specific around this program, please do feel free to reach out to us at goodjobs@eda.gov. Okay, and with that, I think I'm going to bring some of my colleagues back, and we are going to try to answer as many questions as we can. So I think Craig's going to walk us through some Q&A here.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, and I've been watching the chat box a bunch. Lots of great questions coming in. We unfortunately won't have time to get to everything. And as Michelle stated earlier, we do have a lot of resources coming out, including frequently asked questions, list that is going to be regularly updated on the website. Well, let's get started with the first one here, Michelle. What type of wraparound services are eligible expenses, and can these funds be given directly to workers? On that last question specifically, I know a couple of folks in the chat asked how this might be able to use to offset wage costs or stipends and whatnot. So I think this is a very top interest area right now for folks. Michelle, what would you say to that thought?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about the wraparound services that are eligible. Like we mentioned, we really want to be able to fund any sort of services that help remove barriers for workers to be able to participate in training programs. So like I mentioned, childcare, transportation are some obvious ones. Career coaching, language support are other things. We have gotten questions about food and expenses to meals. That, in terms of that, the answer to that question, if those meals and food are provided as part of the training program, those are eligible expenses, but outside of the training program, that is not an eligible expense. And then as Craig mentioned, we cannot give any funds directly to individuals. So these funds would be needed to be given through an eligible entity of EDA who can then provide those type of services to the workers that are participating in the program.
Yeah, and you kind of actually answered the second question. Can funds be used for tuition or wages or wage subsidies? On the surface, no. We can't allow EDA's funds to go directly to citizens. An example would be, could I give $1,000 stipends to participants to help them pay for tuition? No, unfortunately not, but you could, for example, use EDA's grant resources to offset the operating costs of your programming to ultimately decrease. Maybe our funds, resources could pay for salaries, other operational costs to run a building, a facility, then in turn to decrease the tuition expenses, and you wouldn't have to bill a participant, a student, a trainee as high of a fee. But unfortunately, our grant resources can't go directly toward citizens and individuals themselves. Next up, can you tell us more about the requirement to be aligned with SEDS, or Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy? What if a region doesn't have one?
So that is a requirement of EDA. All of our proposals and projects that we fund need to be aligned with a comprehensive economic development strategy. And so for those who aren't familiar with that, we do encourage you to reach out to your local EDA office. They can help you identify where that is at. But that is one of the requirements that we do have for all proposals and projects that we fund.
So this next one, well, I'll add to that, Michelle, that last point too. And I think it complements the top of the call where we talked about regionalism, the importance of place-based, bottom-up economic development. We want strategies, we want infrastructure projects that are going to align with a region's best interests, and that's where the comprehensive economic development strategy comes to play, and make sure that we're doing work in line with one another, complementing strengths and other activities across the region, and that is the spirit of a regional workforce system, in fact. So hope that really helps folks think more strategically about this type of work. And if you're getting to know your economic development district, and you're getting to know EDA, you might be starting to get some ideas about other projects. I briefly talked about the other 5 programs we have. So this next question, are there limits on funding requests or grants awarded? I'll talk about one portion of this, and maybe Michelle, you could talk about limits on funding for this program. But we welcome proposals from all communities across all programs, all 6 EDA programs, as long as A, you're eligible, remember that list of eligible applicants, and B, that if you do choose to participate in multiple EDA programs, that your projects are uniquely different. And I know there's a lot of regional collaborators on this call today. Perhaps you have an idea for the Good Jobs Challenge, and perhaps you've got an idea for the other big regional one, the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, and that's okay, as long as those projects are uniquely different. Help us help you, and by avoiding duplication and decreasing our volume of applications, please don't submit the same thing to multiple programs. But Michelle, what about funding requests, and what should folks be thinking about with this particular challenge and the size and scale of proposals?
It's a great question. So we haven't specifically put any limits on any one project of the max that we will give. Again, we really want you all to tell us what you need to be successful. You will recall a couple slides back, I did give some ballpark ranges. I think that's just from our sense of this type of work and what it typically takes, what we think would be the right ranges as you think about whether you are applying for one region, multiple regions, or one industry or multiple industries. So we're hoping that gives you a guide. But again, tell us what you need. You'll see in the proposal, you've got to lay out what the budget narrative is. And so as long as things are reasonable, we are certainly open to entertaining that. So you tell us what you need to make a successful training program to get workers into.
Yep. Thanks. I probably already answered this a little bit. This last one, can an organization be a part of multiple proposals? Certainly. So you can submit multiple proposals, and you can also be a part of multiple proposals. But please just think about the difference or uniqueness of each proposal to make sure we're thinking strategically and proposing projects and strategies that build on one another and complement one another rather than duplicating efforts. We have a lot of work to do with EDA's $3 billion here, and a lot of different projects and strategies and communities to support. Now, I've looked through the questions, Michelle. I think we've hit a lot of the themed ones that came about, were most popular. There are some more specific technical ones that I don't know if we'll have time to get to. I do see one that I think came in around infrastructure and construction. I think Michelle briefly said that if part of your proposal might require construction, building out a facility. Unfortunately, we can't welcome that type of proposal under this program, but we do have our economic adjustment and assistance program where we can do construction projects. The soft side, soft programming, the systems development is really what this program is for. Good jobs. Michelle, would you add any? Did you see any other themes here in the box?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. The only other one I did see a few times I just wanted to touch on was the match requirement for this program. So there is no formal requirement for matching funds for this program. However, that being said, we do strongly encourage you to bring match to the table if you have that ability to do that. We know that there are a lot of organizations out there who are very eager to fund this type of work, and obviously we would love to see our dollars go further. And so to the extent that you are able to secure a match, please do talk about that in your proposal, but there's no formal match requirement to be able to participate. We do want to make sure that we are keeping this program open, particularly to regions who may not have these type of systems or partnerships in place already. So all are welcome to.
Yeah, and we do get into much more detail in our notice of funding opportunity. If you haven't read it yet, please really start there. It's available now, and we're welcoming applications today. The program is fully open, everyone. We want you to get started now. We recognize that this is going to be a lot of work to get such a system moving. It's why we have such a long application period. Please stay tuned for further updates. We've got FAQs, or frequently asked questions, regular getting updated. I see a lot of the questions in here that we've answered in there. So check that out and get started today. That's it from me. Michelle, I think we covered a lot of great stuff.
One quick thing, Greg. One quick thing. We apologize. We had the wrong email address up. So what you see right now on our slide right now is the correct email address for the Good Jobs Challenge email box. It's goodjobschallenge@eda.gov. We've got folks standing by ready to answer your email, so do feel free to send us any questions.
Awesome. Thanks. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.